Good evening. I'd like to open this meeting. It's 7:05. I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for former chairman of the Wilmington Board of Selectmen and former Wilmington Fire Chief Daniel Wendell Sr., who passed away on December 17th. Thank you. We should also keep in our prayers Wilmington retired Police Sergeant David McHugh Sr., who passed away on December 20th, and Wilmington resident Woburn Police Officer John McGuire, who was killed in the line of duty on December 26th. Also, you may have noticed the flags at all the public buildings around town are at half-staff. They will remain down through Friday, January 14th for the victims of the tragedy that happened in Tucson, Arizona this past weekend. Condolences to the victims, survivors, and their families. Let's keep those in our prayers as well. All the selectmen are present, and we're going to start by transmitting a Treasury warrants 24, 24A, 25, 25A, 26, 26A, 27, and 27A.
Move the warrants as read by the chairman.
Motion made.
Second.
Second. All in favor? It's unanimous. We have approval of minutes from October 25th meeting, 2010. Motion to accept those.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion made and second. All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, our first appointment is with Brian Premu, Manager, EHS and Fire Prevention, Textron Defense Systems, for the public hearing relative to the application of Avco Manufacturing Corporation for an amended flammable license for property located at 201 Lowell Street.
Yes.
Mr. Premu, you can sit up there. Good evening. How are you this evening?
I'm very good, thank you.
Good.
Looking forward to the snowstorm Wednesday.
Yes, yes.
I have with me the return receipts for notification of all the abutters.
Okay. Get those to the town manager, please.
And I'm prepared to answer any questions that the board or citizens may have regarding the application.
Okay, is there any recommendations from department heads?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The Inspector of Buildings has indicated that there is no outstanding zoning issues at that particular site. We also have a letter from the Fire Chief, Edward Bradbury, indicating that he approves the reconstruction of a license for the storage of flammable and combustible liquids, LP gas, and explosives as requested by Avco Manufacturing Company doing business as Textron Defense Systems at 201 Lowell Street, indicating the sprinkler and fire alarm inspections are current. The Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms have inspected and approved the explosives storage magazines.
Questions, comments, or a motion from the board?
If I might ask a brief question, everything is in order here as far as I'm concerned. Is it Mr. Primo? Is that how I would?
Primo, yes.
Mr. Primo, so thank you for your diligence in that regard. For my edification, just as I read through some of this application language, a little heady for me. Could you maybe give us a real brief summary of what the application is in effect requesting, why we're going through this exercise?
Certainly. As you're aware, the Avco manufacturing plant has been located at 201 Lowell Street for more than 50 years. The facility, the licenses are issued to the property, and there were licenses issued dating back to 1958 up to about 1972. The fire department was looking through the licenses, identified multiple licenses. Some of the language on them was very old, and met with me to request that we update the licenses to our current amounts. The original licenses from 1950s allowed us to store much greater quantities of materials than we need now. So we proceeded with this amended license. One of the items on the license is storage for the explosive materials that we use to build the fuses for some of our products. These are what are known as a hazard division 1.4 type device. They typically weigh, for explosive content, 1/2 of 1 gram of explosive per item. So if you're holding one and it detonates, it might hurt your fingers. If you're standing next to a person, it's not going to have an effect whatsoever. And that's currently the vast majority of the work we do today in explosives. We also sometimes do some research and development, looking for more opportunities with other classes of explosive. All the explosives have to be handled in accordance with ATF regulations, state fire code regulations, and we're also inspected by the Department of Defense. The explosives are stored in ATF-certified magazines that are licensed also by the State Fire Marshal. And the amount we can store is dictated by several calculations on how far an effect would occur if something were to detonate. All of our magazines are well within what they call these quantity distance requirements, including our main storage magazine. If there was an event there, we probably would not even notice it unless we were standing next to the magazine. We store so little today and they're so well built. In addition to the explosives, we also work with a number of solvents, chemicals, and a lot of adhesives, which are solvents. We do not have any wet chemical or bulk processes, but we have a number of laboratories that use isopropyl alcohol, acetone, and materials such as that for doing chemical research as well as cleaning optics and cleaning metal parts, machinery, and circuit boards.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I recognize that this license doesn't discuss it, but in terms of disposal, you assured me, and I feel comforted to hear ATF and Department of Defense and some other large agencies have oversight into the way you're storing some of these things. But in terms of when you have refuse, when it's time to discard some of theirs, is there, I suspect there is procedure. Can you discuss any procedures there are related to that?
There certainly are procedures. The Federal Environmental Protection Agency passed a law in the early 1990s referred to as the Military Munitions Rule that did clarify that waste explosives or any surplus explosives are a hazardous waste and subject to the full hazardous waste regulations. If we have an explosive item that is determined to be a waste, we no longer have a need for it, we have 90 days to remove it from the property. It has to be transported by a licensed facility company to a EPA licensed treatment, storage, and disposal facility. And under a standard uniform hazardous waste manifest, the entire way through every step of the process, from us giving it to the transporter, to the disposal site, and then they return it back to us, the form, stating that it was properly destroyed.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Primo. I appreciate the answers very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Are there any butters out there? Yep.
I just have a question. What protocol do you follow for the people who have access to those explosives? How do you secure?
Okay, the question is, how do we secure the explosives and the protocol we use for access to them? We have two levels of security. The first being we are, as a government defense contractor, most of our employees have national security clearances, so they've been examined by the Department of Defense and issued clearances. Also, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms has a regulation called the Safe Explosives Act, passed in the wake of 9/11, that mandates any person with access to explosives has to pass an ATF background check. So we actually have to go through two checks, one with ATF and a separate one with Department of Defense for our security clearances. Our explosives have multiple layers of security around them, and only persons with those background clearances are allowed access to them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other butters have any questions today for this? No more questions or comments from the board? Entertain a motion?
I'd move to grant the request.
I'll make a second to that motion.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? It's unanimous? Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You get that to that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Our 7:10 appointment tonight is with Holly Nahabedian, President, Chamber of Commerce, and Nancy Valley, Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce. Request to conduct Town of Wilmington's 7th Annual Half Marathon 5K Run Walk on Sunday, September 25th, 2011. Ladies, how you doing tonight?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for having us. As you mentioned, my name is Nancy Valley, Executive Director of the Wilmington Chamber of Commerce. And I have Holly here, our Chamber President and Manager of Danvers Bank. And we are here today to ask permission to once again have the Chamber organize and implement the Wilmington's Road Race, which would happen in September. As you all know, I was here last year, and for the first time, the Chamber took on this initiative, and I must say, I think that it was a well-run, well-attended event. It was a great event for the community. Just a few stats. We had 551 people that participated in the race itself, which was a 36% increase over the prior year's participants. And that doesn't even include the 100 people that were spectators there for the runners. We had music, food, activities, and of course the perfect weather made it a great community event. We did have many teams that participated in the event in 2010, including a huge team that walked in honor of Kelly Murray. And proceeds from the race allowed us to donate $2,000 to the Kelly Murray Scholarship Fund. We're giving $5,000 in scholarships to the Wilmington High School in May, and we have a donation to the Wilmington Town Scholarship Fund as well, which we have here with us today. So we would like to do this all again in 2011. Our proposed date is Sunday, September 25th, at the same location in front of WCTV on Waltham Street, and we hope we get your permission, and permission also to start to contact Chief Pagonis to secure the police approval and all of that needs to be done. This year, we have 8 months to plan it, as opposed to 2 months that we had last year for the Chamber, so I'm confident it will be even more successful than it was last year. Do you have anything?
The only question I had is, assuming we're approved today, do we have to come back every year for an approval, or once we kind of get forward, are we okay with that, or is this an annual event?
If I may,
For us.
in order to use the roadways, the selectmen have to give approval. You certainly probably don't have to come back. You could just write a letter, and I'm sure the selectmen would accept that. But it's always a good idea, I think, particularly if you do it closer to the event, to publicize it. And at least that's what the selectmen have done in the past, that they've kind of encouraged people to come in. But that would be up to the chairman and yourself.
It is a good idea, a good venue to help get the word out as well. And it was a great event last year.
Thank you.
And
Well,
very well
speaking of
run.
advertising, as we did last year, with permission from the town, we were able to advertise on the town website and on the Rotary sign, which we would hope that we could do again this year. In addition, we would like to be able to get into the 2011 town calendar and in the town topics for this year for additional advertising for the race.
You can deal with my office on that.
Very good. Any questions, comments?
Well, I think it's fairly certain that this is going to be a remarkably successful event this year because of the co-chairs that will be running the event. So I'm excited. I'm sorry. I was going to disclose I'm a part of the chamber, and I'm also going to be working very closely with Holly and Nancy on this event. So I'm excited about it. I hope you, my colleagues, will support it as well. It's great. It's a great event. I'm so delighted the chamber is taking it on, and as Nancy said, with the extra time here, we hope to pull off a good show for the town as well.
Motion? We need a motion, right? Yeah, we need we entertain a motion to...
I make a motion that we grant the request here this evening relative to the Chamber of Commerce Town of Wilmington Annual Marathon 5K Walk on Sunday, September 25, 2011.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and second, all in favor? It's unanimous.
Can we count on the selectmen being a team?
Good luck.
You can choose walk or run.
Somebody's got to deliver the hot
Or at
dog.
least we have the starting line, yes.
Somebody's got to eat them too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, do you want to make that? Why don't you make a presentation? And this is the,
This is our donation from the road race to the
Oh,
town.
okay. This is a donation of $500 to the Town of Wilmington Scholarship Fund. Thank you very much.
Our pleasure.
Okay, our 7:15 appointment is with Carolyn Harris, Chairman, Historical Commission, and Teresa McDermott, Museum Curator, to come to talk about the Winifred Richardson Estate on 280 Woburn Street. Yes.
I just want
Good
to,
evening.
Terry McDermott will not be attending tonight's meeting. She is ill, and I'm sure we all wish her a very, very speedy recovery.
Okay, so she couldn't make it tonight, okay. I'm going to ask the town manager to read this letter.
just to bring this into the record, and then Carolyn will
Absolutely.
be able to speak on all of the issues that are before the Board of Selectmen. But the board, of course, recalls that they had, at a previous meeting, asked the Historical Commission to look into the entire issue of the best use and acquisition of the Richardson Estate property. And after various meetings and telephone conferences, I received a letter directed to me from the attorney for the trust, Jeffrey Zellers, who represents the Winifred Richardson Trust at 280 Woburn Street. And he wrote that he was writing to follow up on a telephone conference call of December 14th with myself, attorney Lou Ross, who represents the town, and Bob Eckberg, who is the trustee for the Richardson Estate. And the board has been apprised of this, obviously, as well as the Historical Commission. The letter is intended to serve as a formal notification to the town of the trustee's determination, pursuant to the terms of the trust, that the town is not an appropriate recipient of 280 Woburn Street. As discussed, the trust has two broad directives for the trustee with regard to the Woburn Street property. One is to determine whether the town of Wilmington is an appropriate recipient of the property, and the trust indicates that there may be reasons that the town would be inappropriate, such as concerns for the common law rule of merger. And he goes on to discuss all of that and indicates that the town would not, in their minds, be an appropriate recipient. And secondly, he indicates that under the second broad provision of the trust, if the town does not accept the property, the trustee is to designate a suitable replacement beneficiary qualifying for the charitable estate tax deduction, and failing that, to find and designate a replacement beneficiary prior to the one-year anniversary of Miss Richardson's death, which anniversary falls on January 20th, 2011. More importantly, however, he indicates that they've identified two other qualifying organizations as possible recipients of the property, with the realization that they in fact may not continue to hold the property, but would provide assurances that the ultimate transferee of the property would abide by the terms of the preservation restriction agreement, which, by the way, the town holds. We hold the easement. Those two organizations are the Trustees of Reservations and Historic New England. The trustee will continue to undertake due diligence with regard to these organizations, and this is important, and would be happy to entertain the town's thoughts on any preference between the two organizations, or the identification of other organizations that might qualify as appropriate recipients, including qualification of the transfer for charitable estate tax deduction purposes. The trustee intends to keep the town informed of its progress with regard to the identification of the replacement recipient. In the meantime, if you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. Obviously, Carolyn has been in touch with both Mr. Eckberg and with Attorney Zeller, and I'm sure she'll speak to that issue. And she'll also speak to the issue that the Selectmen had asked to be addressed, and that was to make a recommendation, bearing in mind what has happened in the interim, but to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen relative to a proposed use for the property.
Thank you. Before responding to these recent developments that have been outlined, removing the town as beneficiary to the Winifred Richardson will, and on behalf of the Wilmington Historical Commission, I'd like to make a few comments. As you've heard, members of the commission, myself included, say many times, the goals of the Wilmington Historical Commission is preservation, conservation, and education of Wilmington's history. Where often it is not possible to save historic buildings and landmarks, we do our best. Our goal has always been to leave some of our history to future generations so that they may know the community roots. With this in mind, the Wilmington Historic Commission has preserved the Richardson estate for generations to come through the historic preservation's easements, which the town of Wilmington unanimously voted to accept in 2004. We know that the land, the house, the barn will remain. In working with Winifred, we know it was her expressed wish that this property go to the town for community use in agriculture, education, and recreational use with certain restrictions. When she passed on January 20th, 2010, the commission was made aware of the fact that accepting this property would mean a vote by town meeting. Since that time, we've worked diligently to create a fiscally responsible plan for the use of the property, which would have the most beneficial impact for the citizens of Wilmington. We've held public meetings, solicited comments and ideas from numerous organizations and individuals. Our research focused on Winifred Richards' wishes that the property be used for agriculture and that there be an educational component to teach children that corn doesn't really come from a market basket. Terry McDermott spearheaded our research into community-supported agricultural models throughout the entire area. She was responsible for an overwhelming amount of research and personal visits to community-supported farms on behalf of the Historical Commission. We publicly want to thank Terry for her hard work and to make note of her contribution to this effort. The Wilmington Historical Commission feels very comfortable in the fact that we were nearing completion of our recommendation on the Richardson estate for the Board of Selectmen. We feel that our plan, once presented at town meeting, and I'm usually very conservative when I say that, but there is a tremendous amount of support for agriculture and education in this community. And we feel certain that had we gone to a warrant article and had presented it at town meeting, that we would have had the support of the citizens of Wilmington. However, this will not happen as the town has been officially removed as a beneficiary. I recently communicated, actually last Thursday, with Mr. Eckberg regarding his decision and asked him to reconsider, and he simply said no. Removal of the town as a beneficiary was due to many considerations on his behalf, which the town had little or no chance to have an effect on this decision. The trust wanted this matter settled by January 20th, 2011, the one-year anniversary of Winifred's passing. The trust refused to wait until town meeting on April 31st, and there was no way of them to reconsider. They were concerned that the outcome of the vote wouldn't be in their favor, and they wanted this trust settled. The trustee himself is an elderly gentleman who has been harassed by nonprofits and private individuals who have been named as beneficiaries. He has indicated to me his concern that if this is not settled, he may be subject to legal action. And of course, we would have to transfer the historical preservation easements to another organization if the town were to take this property. And identifying such an organization was of prime concern to the Historical Commission, and we were working on it, and it was not an easy task to find anyone up to this point. So as a result, according to the communication from the trustee's lawyer on December 22nd, 2 organizations have been identified: the Trustees for Reservations and Historic New England. The Historical Commission has knowledge of both of these organizations. They are highly respected preservation organizations. They will work with the town to find an appropriate owner to the property who will agree to all the historic preservation easements. However, in all probability, the property will be sold to an individual. The potential use of the property for agriculture or educational purposes would not be guaranteed. The letter, however, does allow the town of Wilmington to suggest an appropriate recipient for consideration by the trustee. In my conversations with Mr. Ekberg, he has promised me that he will look upon any organization that is recommended by the board of home, with the hopes that it will be a solution to this issue. The Wilmington Historical Commission, as you asked us to do the research and to make a recommendation to the board, we would like to recommend to the Board of Selectmen the Wilmington Community Farm Incorporated, a nonprofit organization, as such an appropriate recipient of the Richardson estate. This nonprofit organization is operated by a board of directors consisting at present of President Don Reedy, Director and Clerk Amanda Munsey, and Treasurer Ray Robinson. This organization, I'm just going to quote their farm mission, which I believe you have. Their mission is to honor Winifred Richardson, her family, and the many generations of farmers who worked the land at 280 Woburn Street by maintaining the farm as an educational and agricultural resource for all citizens of Wilmington. To preserve the Richardson Farm as a place for children of Wilmington to connect with the town's agrarian past through interactive agricultural education programs. In addition, as you'll see in your packet, the organization has a detailed business plan and an educational plan. I'm going to focus, as you can read through the business plan that calls for the using the land for sustainable growing methods that maintain the fertility instilled in the soil by the Richardson family, provide accessibility to produce through direct sales at Wilmington Farmer Market and on-site farm stands, with proceeds being used to maintain the farm, restore the building and structures, make them accessible and valuable asset for education as an educational resource in the Wilmington community. Recruit creative and dedicated community members to the board and committees, which I understand there's been an overwhelming interest in this. I believe some of the emails that they have recently received are included in your packet. Procure needed financial resources through grants and fundraising, and consult with the nonprofit Land for Good to ensure that sound land use decisions are made and that the farm is successful. In addition, the educational program calls for programs, after-school programs, preschool through grade 8, programs for teens, and programs for adults. A great deal of time, effort, and energy has been put into creating this nonprofit and to looking at a vision for the Richardson estate that would benefit the citizens of Wilmington. Present this evening, if the board should have any questions, are Don Reedy and Amanda Munsey. The Wilmington Historical Commission unanimously supports the efforts of the Wilmington Community Farm. It is a Wilmington organization operated by Wilmington residents with the goal of serving our community through agriculture and education. And we would like to ask the Board of Selectmen to recommend this organization as an appropriate recipient of the Richardson estate. Truly, this organization and the people involved in it embodies the goals that Winifred Richardson had aspired to.
Thank you. I just want
Any
to
questions?
commend you on the work that yourself and the commission has done on this. And maybe you could recognize the commission members that are here with you tonight. I see a few of them out there.
I can't see them. Steve Lawrenson, Bonnie Smith, Jerry, Duggan, Ann Berghaus, and sort of our adjunct member is Adele Passmore, who does an incredible amount of work for us as well. You know, it has been, in all honesty, a lot of work. From the very beginning, our goal was always town meeting, preparing a warrant article. Most important, from the very beginning, in talking with the town manager, we needed a fiscally responsible plan to bring before the Board of Selectmen. And we were nearing that when literally the rug was pulled out from under us. You know, but, you know, maybe we're getting the whole loaf anyway.
When
You
we did
know,
the tour of the,
we have the restrictions, and this Wilmington Community Farm is truly an outstanding group that would meet the requirements that Winifred wanted. It's a nonprofit, it's independent of the town, and
Any questions or comments from the board?
I'll just make a quick comment. Obviously, I'd like to hear from the town manager because he is the chief fiscal officer. It sounds like this thing was off and running, but to be totally honest, just hearing from you, it just seems like the town just got cold-cocked at the 11th hour that we were going to take possession. And for this individual to say that the town's inappropriate, I take offense to that. I truly do. And I'll be honest, I think I get some reservations relative to this property, to be honest with you. You know, I mean, here we're going to give up tax dollars, here we're going to do this. The town has a great reputation in doing things, but you know, I just think somebody's pulling strings behind the scenes here, and you're telling me it looks like maybe down the road an individual may buy the property. So it looks like there might be something going on, you know, down there. I mean, I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm just listening to what you're telling me here, and I'm just thinking about this whole situation, and I just,
I'd like to say this, Mike. First and foremost, the trustees for reservations and Historic New England are really well-established, prestigious organizations, but they have definitive protocols. And what would happen is, although they would try, they would take a look at all of the documentation and try their best to fit an owner to the property would be sold. And that money would go to the organization, and it would be used for their other properties, like they own Crane's Castle, for example. The rug was pulled out from under us at the last minute. I believe the case is that Mr. Ekberg is in his 80s, and there have been some harassing calls and communications from nonprofits who seek to benefit when this trust is settled, as well as from some individuals who are named in the will. He can't handle that. I don't know, but I don't think in any way it is his desire to have this happen. I know personally from comments he's made to me that he feels very bad about it. But that date, January 20th, is very important to him. He wants a plan in place so that he can deal with the nonprofits, charities mostly, that are after their share of the estate, and other individuals. But I took offense to it, too. I really did, because the town of Wilmington would take the property and we would do a great job over there. And there isn't a doubt in my mind or any mind on our commission that that would be the case. But the decision wasn't ours to make. Even though we put everything in writing and sent it up to both the lawyer and the trustee, they were determined that this has to be the way it is. And the town manager and the town lawyer conversed with them several times, to no avail. So, I mean, if something is taken away, you know, like the door's closed, the window's opened, and the window here is the Wilmington Community Farm, you know, our goal is that something good happen over there that will benefit the town of Wilmington. And I think this is it.
I just say, I know you and your organization are doing a good job and everything. It's just sad to hear that, and obviously, the town was moving in a positive direction, and, I just think the jury's still out on this one, to be totally honest with you. All right, then. Thanks.
I do have a couple, I know that Mr. McCoy had asked the manager as to any recommendations he might have in terms of the proposed budget, or any other comments you might have on it. I do have some comments and questions to follow up with, but...
No, well, first of all, I want to allay folks' fears that if one of these two other organizations, or any organization, is provided with this property, they are restricted as to what they can do. So and the fact that the town holds the historical easement on the property means that the town can make sure that they do what they're supposed to do. So I don't want anybody to, although this wasn't the home run that people wanted, I don't want anyone to go away thinking that that property can be developed in such a way other than the way Ms. Richardson determined it to be. If that were the case, then it's very likely that there would have been a lot of interest in that property, whether it was for other public purposes, fields and things like that, or whether it was for development purposes or housing purposes. So at the risk of being redundant, I just want people to understand that the property will be utilized in a manner that meets the Historical Commission's goal of preservation. The question now is whether or not it will be utilized in such a way that the Historical Commission is recommending, and that the Board of Selectmen will have to weigh in on that decision. But ultimately, it is not the town's decision. Ultimately, it'll be a decision determined by the trustee, who is clearly taking direction from the attorney in this case. I do agree with Mrs. Harris that this may, in fact, if it goes the way we would, if the board is so inclined and they want to make this recommendation, that this could be a full loaf. And so I do see, at the risk of too many of these crazy sayings, the glass is half full here. The opportunity, I would recommend, and I think that's what Selectman McCoy was asking, I would recommend that the Board of Selectmen adopt the recommendation of the Historical Commission and direct me to contact the trust on behalf of the Board of Selectmen and recommend the Community Market Association, the Wilmington Farmers Market Association, as an appropriate recipient of the property. And then we would have a belt and suspenders kind of approach. I'm doing this too often with all of these euphemisms there, I apologize. But we would have an opportunity to control it in both ways. So that would be my recommendation. And frankly, from a fiscal point of view, it would be better for the town. There's been no question about this. I mean, the town right now it's hard to understand how they could say we're not an appropriate recipient. We're maintaining the West Schoolhouse, the South Schoolhouse, the Butters Farm, the Herndon Tavern, the Arts Council, and the 4th of July building. My fiscal sense tells me that may be enough, in terms of using municipal resources. And so this is an opportunity to get our cake and eat it too. That's probably 5 of them that I've used so far. So I would recommend that the board consider strongly and accept the recommendation, endorse the project, direct me to go forward with a letter to Mr. Eckberg. And I think if they approve that, then it truly is a good situation for the town.
Yeah, I was just, and at the end, you got to the point that I really wanted to hear from specifically, which was from a fiscal standpoint, you don't have any objection to it, you don't see any pitfalls in the budget that was proposed and presented that maybe I hadn't seen. So my comment is to echo in many respects what's been said. First of all, just to thank you and the commission members and the folks who've been at the front of this for the time and the effort. But at the same time, I also wanted to offer a word of encouragement or consolation that from my perspective, we really haven't lost a whole lot. Now, if it turns out that a beneficiary becomes difficult for the town to enforce its rights, and we have to do a little bit more work, and we have to be a little bit more proactive than we might otherwise want, well, then I guess we lost a little something along the way. But the reality is, we've got, the preservation and the conservation piece that's already in place. Now there's the question of whether or not we can use it for an overall purpose that's for the benefit of the general community. Can we do that in a way that incorporates some component of education, thereby satisfying, that third prong of your mission? Then that's great. Everything's going to come out in the wash. So I just, as frustrating as it is, I'm sure, for you to get so far along the road to kind of get that curveball at the last minute, the fact is we're still in pretty good shape to accomplish the goals that the town wanted to accomplish, and really to do so with a limited financial investment by the town. And if the manager doesn't see any pitfalls in this proposed budget that could come back on the town, then I feel good about where we're at, notwithstanding some last-minute surprises. So job well done, and take heart. I think things are going to turn out well over there.
Thank you.
Questions or comments down there?
When we had the opportunity to tour the property, I remember thinking, as I walked through some of the low ceilings and some of the different rooms, thinking, wow, what could we do with this? And I'm not a creative like you and your commission in trying to think of ways that the town could make use of that property. But I remember thinking to myself, boy, I'm very anxious to see what you come back to us with, because I wasn't coming up with any brilliant ideas on my own. So when the Wilmington Community Farm concept started to evolve, kind of on a separate track, it started to connect in my head. Boy, we have this thing happening over here with the Richardson Estate, and we have the Wilmington Community Farm entity generating some momentum, and it occurred to me maybe there's some synergies there. And this was before the recent turn of events. So when I was reading through our information that we had, I was initially disheartened to find out that Mr. Eckberg, was kind of holding our feet to the fire a little bit, but then very emboldened to see that your recommendation was that we go in that direction. So I want to also express to the folks from the community farm how impressed I am with the business plan that they've assembled, and I know some of them are here. So I happened to stop on the proposed education programs page just because I know that it fulfills some of what Mrs. Richardson had hoped some of the uses of the property would be. But I believe that these are, in fact, advantageous and beneficial things for the population of Wilmington, the people that live here. So I'm excited about, and I'm hopeful that my colleagues will recommend that we move forward with this recommendation, and that Mr. Eckberg will support it, because I think that these are the kind of things that I would like to participate in and have my children have exposure to as well. The only question I guess I have, and I don't know if it's directed at you or your colleagues from the farm, is the farm, I see there's a submit a payment confirmation for your nonprofit corporation application. Have you gotten there yet?
Yes.
You have?
Yes. We are statewide. We're certified as a nonprofit, or legal as a nonprofit. We have our EIN number with the IRS. Federally, you can't become a nonprofit after, you have to wait 8 months of records and things for them to see. So we have 8 months that we have to wait to become federal. But state-wise, we're legal, and IRS, we're legal.
And the reason I ask, and it's probably self-evident, is I would hope that that would not become a blocking point for Mr. Eckberg or for his advisors to say, oh, geez, that this organization isn't yet ready for us to grant them, the property. But it's so that hopefully that has been blocked.
I mean, in 8 months, if we find out in a couple months that this isn't going to happen with the Richardson estate, we'll just move on. And it's still a plan. We still want this for the Wilmington community. So if it's not the Richardson site, we'll bug someone else that has land in Wilmington. So yeah, it's gonna happen by this summer to be federally legal, I guess.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just add to it, I think with the farmers market going in and playing into the effect is my fellow selectman right here next to me, Mike, just stated, I think it's a great idea. I think it's going to add to the town. It's going to add, actually, I'll be honest with you, when I go north in the summer months, I go to the farmer markets further up in Ospey area and further. What I see, believe it or not, is I see the life expansion of smaller children getting involved. They go to these farmers markets, they even like to sell with their parents and whatever, or show what they've grown, give a little bit of incentive to people that go to the stands. And I think it's as you say, it will bring, especially Wilmington, I like to maintain the country aspect of the town, being not the city aspect, but still have that image of some kind of country, urban part of it. And so I always, like the feeling that, especially when you have 6 acres of land, the old farmhouses, the preservation of what it used to be back in the 1800s, even growing up in town, knowing all the farms that I used to know, and knowing that there's a few still in existence to go back and even to say to my grandchildren, that's where it was, and be having an experience. I think it's great. I think the people getting the market coming into this town, great idea. More power with you, and I appreciate it from my own standpoint. And the other thing I like to bring, unrelated to you, is that the workmanship that you're doing to the Hardin Tavern. I've been going by and watching that workmanship on that roof, how meticulous that woodwork and roofing is outstanding. The comments that I'm hearing about how good that quality is, I think whoever hired them, you as a group, really should be noticed, because of what an improvement you've done to that property by maintaining and taking the time and adding to that. I think it's outstanding for the town.
Excited about that roof, and I want to give due credit to Judge Hooper, who is obviously the superintendent of buildings, who is contracted, and of course to the town for their fiscal support. The tavern needed a roof, and they have done an incredible job over there. It's truly beautiful. It's a work of art.
I will say, as you said, not only to Mr. Hooper, but the maintenance people and all the town employees and the department heads of this town. They're a great group. Whenever the selectmen or even the town managers have asked, they perform their workmanship that's making this town very noticeable.
Absolutely. There are representatives here from the Wilmington Community Farm, and I don't want to speak totally on their behalf. Is there anything you would like to add?
This is Dawn, our president.
Dawn and me. I just want to say that this is something that is near and dear to Ray, Amanda, and to myself. We're all longtime Wilmington residents. We all have families here. For me, it has a lot to do with my kids and wanting them to learn about the agricultural past of the town and wanting to enrich the town. My husband and I plan to live here the rest of our lives and would like to enrich the town as best we can, and we really feel that this would be a great addition to the town. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the audience? Seeing none, I guess I'll entertain a motion to direct the town manager to recommend the Wilmington Community Farm as a qualifying organization.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor? It's unanimous? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your continued support of the Wilmington Historical Commission and our projects. We really appreciate it. And I hope this goes through, because it would be a wonderful asset for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Communications.
Mr. Chairman, we have a copy of a letter from Todd Johnson, the chairman of the Tewksbury Board of Selectmen, that was sent to Frank Tremontazzi, the chief engineer for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, regarding the I-93 Tri-Town Interchange project. He notes that the Tewksbury Board of Selectmen voted to support the ring road concept for an interchange configuration that was presented during a meeting with the U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Raymond LaHood. He writes that the concept facilitates the development of land in the I-93 Tri-Town Development Area through the creation of a system of access roads that would become public ways in the community in which each is developed, thus supporting Tewksbury's desire to not provide a direct connection to existing local roadways. The Board of Selectmen in Tewksbury continues to work cooperatively with representatives of Andover and the town of Wilmington. And we also have a similar letter from the town of Andover, which was copied to Mr. Tremontazzi and others, that came from the Planning Board Chairman Joan Duff to Alex Vispoli, the Chairman of the Andover Board of Selectmen. And they also indicate that they were in support of recommending the interchange configuration that facilitates the development of land in the Lowell Junction area through a creation of access roads that are similar to the positions taken by the town of Wilmington and now the town of Tewksbury.
Refresh my memory, we too have written a very similar letter to this that has been submitted.
Actually, we're the first ones out of the gate. We did do that.
Thank you.
You have a memorandum from me that I'm happy to notify you and the residents that once again, for the 7th consecutive year, the town of Wilmington has been recognized by the Massachusetts Municipal Association as an award recipient in the annual town report contest. Wilmington was named the second place recipient in Category 1, which is for the largest communities, any community with a population of 12,500 or greater. You will recall that Wilmington received first place awards in 2003, 2004, and 2006. And this is our second place award, one having received in 2005, and then we received third place awards in 2007 and 2008. I just want to express my gratitude to all who participate in the formulation of the this important production, and a special commendation to my staff, who, under the expert guidance of Beverly Dalton, your secretary, spend a tremendous amount of hours in the production of the report, which, unlike many other communities, we provided camera ready to the printer without the benefit of any outside assistance. So I'm proud of that work that's being done, and happy to mention that what we spoke about at the meeting in December was the Innovation Award that we are receiving. I note that Don Pearson is here, the chairman of the Board of Library Trustees, who's very much a part of the bookstore next door. I know we gave it sufficient, probably a sufficient plug at the last meeting, but this is a great trip to the MMA conference for the town of Wilmington this year, because we are really unique, I think, in receiving two major awards out of the 351 communities in the Commonwealth, one for the annual report and the other for an innovation award for the great work that's done by the volunteers at the bookstore next door. Wanted to provide information to the board regarding the annual town meeting and fiscal year 2012 budget calendar, and I provided that by way of a calendar that outlines all of that information. Has been provided to members of the press. It also speaks very specifically to the Finance Committee department meetings, which will begin on Tuesday, February 1st, and conclude, and these are department meetings only, through Tuesday, March 1st, of various days in February and up to that first day in March. The dates are all on the town's website. For those of you who are familiar with the website, from the home page, click on Town Calendars and then Upcoming Meetings. And where the Finance Committee is listed, if one clicks on that, it will also open to what is on the agenda, so that it'll tell you what specific departments are scheduled to meet. So all of that information has been made available to the press. It's on the website. You can call the town. In terms of specific important dates that you will want to be aware of, I think, is that the budget presentation will be made at the Selectmen's meeting on January 31st, and then the Finance Committee will hold their hearings to review the specific information with all of the various municipal and school departments. And then on March 15th, looking ahead is when the Finance Committee and the Planning Board will meet jointly for a hearing to go through all of the warrant articles. And the Selectmen will see the various listing of dates that we will have to go forward with for the annual town meeting and budget. The board is being asked to consider approving a license to the Wilmington Farmers Market Association for the purpose of conducting a farmers market on town of Wilmington property. At the board's last meeting, I believe I was directed to go forward with a final license agreement, which has been prepared. And just briefly, the grant of license would enable the Wilmington Farmers Market Association to enter upon premises owned by the town of Wilmington, the former Swain School location, which is the large parking lot in the adjacent area on Middlesex Avenue. The term of the license would be specific to the July 10th, 2011, and would go and through September 4th, 2011, which are the dates that were agreed to with the members of the Farmers Market Executive Board. We would enable them to use these premises for the specific purpose of holding a farmers market, and in consideration of the use of the license, the licensee would need to agree to pay a one-time license fee of $1. And that's something that the attorney told me we had to put in there. If you don't give us $1, we won't be chasing you, but that's also part of this. More important, they have to provide the indemnification insurance, which has been agreed to, that indemnifies and holds harmless the town of Wilmington, and it is written in a manner which is met town council approval, as well as our own insurance advisor's approval. Specifically, in terms of conditions of the license, the licensee may sponsor the farmers market from 12:30 p.m. on a Sunday until 3:30 p.m., again commencing July 10th and ending on September 4th. They will have the opportunity to go on the property beforehand in order to set up, but agents of the licensee will have to be on the premises not only during the operation of the farmers market, but also during any of the designated setup times, breakdown times, and cleanup times. The licensee will be required to hire and pay for any police details that may be required by the Wilmington Police Chief. And again, this is all what we have already gone over, and there may not be any reason to do that, but that's something that they will talk to the police chief about. And the licensee will obviously keep the town apprised of anything that is going on, or any plans or programs that they have, as well as to communicate with all abutting property owners so that there will be no issues arising between the operation of the farmers market and the nearby neighbors. It's understood that the licensee will engage the participation of farmers and producers or vendors who will offer for sale local produce and goods. And they will also agree to enforce that each vendor remove any trash generated from their own sales activity, and as well to collect and remove all trash and debris from the licensed premises immediately after the conclusion of sales activity each Sunday evening during the term of the license. They will meet all the terms and conditions established by the Department of Public Works, including but not limited to the erection of temporary structures, the removal of trash and debris, the safe use of the parking area, entrance and exit locations. They will make available a general area restroom and hand washing facilities. Any temporary facility must be removed each week immediately following the conclusion of all activities. They will need to comply with all the permitting requirements of the Wilmington Board of Health. If there are no surprises here, this is what we've gone through. I can tell you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's been a pleasure to work with this group. They've been very, very cooperative. It's a new venture. You're always a little bit skittish and have a little angst when you're doing something new, but I can assure you that I feel very confident that this will be a successful endeavor for the town, and I would recommend that the board approve the license to the Farmers Market Association in the form that they have received it.
Questions or comments or a motion from the board?
I'll make the motion that we approve the license for the Wilmington Farmers Market Association for the market to use the town-owned properties such as the Swain School area.
Second.
Motion made and second, all in favor? It's unanimous? Good luck.
Dana is going to have to sign for the license agreement.
Have Dana come in?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Pay you that dollar, too.
We'll hold you to it. Congratulations.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Chairman, the Board is being asked to consider approving the collective bargaining agreement between the Town of Wilmington and the International Association of Firefighters, Local 1730. The agreement, as you know, which you have ratified in executive session, but for the information of the public, is similar in scope to the other municipal unions that have already signed agreements. It is a 3-year contract with a 0% in the first year, which is fiscal year 2010, and 2.5% in each of the successive years, fiscal year 2011 and fiscal year 2012. So the contract would go for 3 years. It would be effective July 1st, 2009, and it would expire on June 30th, 2012. 0%, 2.5%, 2.5%. It's a 5% increase in compensation over a 3-year period. And I would recommend that the board approve the contract, which has been ratified by the firefighters local, but obviously it's subject to the approval of the Board of Selectmen.
Questions, comments, or a motion?
Move to approve the contract as just stated by the town manager.
Second?
Motion made and second, all in favor? It's unanimous?
You all set, mate? Yes, Mr. Chairman, that concludes the regular portion of the agenda.
Public comments? Okay, new business or committee reports?
Start that one?
Anything down there?
All the way down here? Yeah, no committee report specifically. I want to say that I'm awfully happy about the way this evening has gone. I think we've done a couple of good things, not the least of which is recommending the Richardson estate be turned over to the Wilmington Community Farm. I'm excited about that, and I do indeed hope that Mr. Eckberg, I think that's his name, take serious consideration of that. I'm also very pleased that the Wilmington Community Farm will be setting up shop at the Swain School lot in the summertime. I think, as most of you know, I've been bullish on that, and I'm excited that that will be in place, and I've been impressed with their professionalism through this process. So I think I also wanted to take just a moment and express to the people of Wilmington, I personally am guilty of this, so I'm not pointing fingers here. I think we all take for granted how good things are sometimes. And I think Mr. Kyra did a nice job today of pointing out Beverly and the folks here in Town Hall who do such a great job in putting together the calendar, putting together the town report, the annual report, the folks from the bookstore next door. These programs are innovative. They're top-notch among our peer communities. We've just grown accustomed to having top-notch stuff all the time. It doesn't come without a lot of hard work, and I thought it was worth an extra couple of moments of congratulations to them and thanks to them, and I hope our townsfolk, if they have opportunity to stop in through Town Hall, will say thank you to these good people. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That was great. Ray, top that?
I can't add to that. I mean, I said it many a times, even earlier, that the town department heads and the management, the board of selectmen, and all the people even that donate their time to the town of Wilmington makes this town very outstanding. And during the day, sometimes I think about it, that we're always number one and number two, no matter what we do, even on things that we have to just have people volunteer, and we seem to come out ahead all the time. And I guess it's the body of strength that makes us number one as a team unit together with the whole community as a group to maintain it, and you do an outstanding job.
Excellent. Can you two get that in writing so we can get it out to the press?
I see the pens going.
Yeah, I see the pen and
Okay, important dates.
Mr. Chairman, we are still collecting Christmas trees at curbside. We will be doing that through January 14th. So that's the rest of this week. Just put your Christmas tree outside, and it'll be picked up by the trash collector. Please make sure any of the decorations are off the trees. I want to notify the town and what the board already is aware of, that there will be a Board of Health meeting. This is as a follow-up to some comments that were made at the Olin informational meeting. Board of Health is meeting with representatives from the State Department of Public Health to receive an update on the Wilmington cancer study that was begun way back in the late 90s. That meeting is in room 9, Tuesday, January 18th at 5:30. The board's next meeting will not be until January 31st here at the town hall, and that will be the meeting that will primarily focus on the fiscal year 2012 budget proposal. And a reminder to residents who are interested, February 4th is the last day to submit petitioned warrant articles for inclusion on the warrant for the annual town meeting of April 30th. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to...
motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion made and second. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.